Today, we have an exciting session on a project that American Red Cross has been doing with Indonesian Red Cross. It's really been a massive team effort. We have a couple of those team members on the call today to present on it. We have two lovely volunteers, Tom Jordan and Robin Streeter. Tom has been supporting with the technical implementation. Robin has been doing a lot of hydrology-related research and literature review to support the project. And then Teguh from the Indonesian delegation will be also presenting on program implementation. And the rest of the team there, as well as all of the staff and volunteers at PMI, have been absolutely crucial to getting this project done. We are maybe a quarter of the way through, but wanted to share some interesting insights and updates from the initial setup phase of the project. So with that, I will hand it over to Tom to get us started.
Can everyone hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Yeah. Okay, sounds great. So as Dan mentioned, my name is Tom Jordan. I am a volunteer with American Red Cross International Services. My day job is for a large research university in the Midwest, and there I do a lot of technology evaluation and research and things like that. So just to start off, a quick question about why would a humanitarian organization be involved in monitoring river flow? There are the obvious immediate disaster recognition and response aspects of early flood warning and response, but we've actually been looking at this project mainly through the lens of anticipatory action, really helping to understand how we can better anticipate flooding events, how we can work with partner agencies to be able to collect more data and to make that data deliver more with regards to services for affected populations, plans for future development and things like that. And we really believe that this type of technology has applications in all three segments of the disaster cycle, in planning, in response, and in recovery, helping us to understand river behavior, where we need more data, where the data that we have is sufficient, when it comes to applying maintenance dollars for our waterways, understanding obstructions that need to be cleared and things like that, where is the best investment to manage our water effectively, and then to make sure that that data can actually be engaged with things like public planning, understanding as climate changes and as river behavior changes. Do we need to change our approach towards urban planning or land use or things like that? Or direct our maintenance dollars in different directions to be able to safeguard communities and apply this data more effectively across different agencies. Next slide, please, Dan. So this kind of gets us to challenges with conventional river monitoring. The OpenRiverCam software that we're using addresses several of these directly. Manual systems require regular readings. You can see in the picture on the left a river staff gauge that simply lists the height of the river at any given point in time. This can be monitored manually, which means that somebody needs to take a walk out, write down their observation. It can be monitored remotely, but still there is a cycle if someone needs to check, record the value, things like that. There are automated versions of this available. They generally require equipment to be installed in the river and then maintained. Other types of flow monitoring might include the diagram on the right, which is a turbine that would measure river velocity. Again, anything that we put in the river, like a turbine or a stilling well that that quiets the river water, creates a calm spot so that levels can be measured and things like that. All of those things will require maintenance over time. They'll get sediment in them. They'll need to be cleaned out. They'll need to be recalibrated and things like that. And the high cost of deploying these stations limits the number that we can deploy effectively and maintain over time. One significant challenge facing Indonesian river monitoring is the number of stations that require maintenance and that are either non-functional or need to be addressed in some way. And so OpenRiverCam is an opportunity to start to fill in the gap between these high cost, high maintenance devices and the data that we need to get a better picture of river behavior. Next slide, please. So OpenRiverCam is a combination of hardware and software that was developed by a professor from Delft University, Hessel Winsemius, that really focuses on the idea of using a low-cost computer and web camera or video camera to collect information, analyze it with software, and report it to a centralized server. In terms of classes of technology, OpenRiverCam falls comfortably into edge computing or Internet of Things, where we're using a low-cost device in the field to collect data and forward that to a central organization for analysis. The way that OpenRiverCam does this is that on a periodic basis, every 15, 30 minutes is generally the average. It will capture 5 seconds of video and look for surface motion. In hydrology, there is a term called tracer, which I'll use in this discussion that really talks about visual movement on the surface of a river. A wave can be a tracer, leaves floating down the river can be tracers. It's really just visible movement that shows us the rate that the surface water is moving. So OpenRiverCam can capture this in 5 seconds of video, detect the surface motion, and then join that with information that we've collected previously about the river's cross section, how wide it is, how deep it is, how much water it contains. And then based on that information, it can tell us how much water is flowing through that river at any given point in time without having to place equipment in the river and with relying solely on a low-cost computer and a video camera. So this does a couple of things for us. First off, it allows us to deploy a site that requires minimal maintenance. The professor that we're working with on this project has sites that they visit once a year, primarily to clear vegetation and make sure that the camera's view is not obstructed, which is definitely a step up from from some of the manual maintenance required. The second thing it allows us to do is it allows us to get to more remote regions where heavier construction for river diversion or turbine installation or things like that would be substantially more difficult, which gives us some opportunities for monitoring higher upstream than we might have been able to in in other situations. Indonesian rivers in particular are very short and steep, and so being able to monitor higher upstream in more difficult conditions is very attractive. The other piece that OpenRiverCam gives us is higher temporal resolution. I mentioned that, manual gauges, you might have somebody check that once a day. You might have an automated process that checks in once every 4 hours. With monitoring every 15 to 30 minutes and upload of data to a central server, we're creating the opportunity to respond much more quickly to rapid onset events like flood waves and things like that. That coupled together with rainfall data helps us give a much richer perspective around how rainfall events drive river behavior and how that affects flood-prone communities. Next slide, please. The magic behind OpenRiverCam is a technique called large-scale particle image velocimetry, and I promise never to use that term again. So essentially the principle behind it is that if we can see things moving on the surface of the river and we can count how many pixels, not we, the computer can count how many pixels those tracers move in a given point of time, and we have a really good map between the digital world and the physical world, we can actually translate pixels per second into meters per second, and we can figure out how fast that river is flowing. And if we've conducted a survey on that river and we know how deep it is and how wide it is at various river levels, we know not only the surface velocity, but we also know how much water is moving through that river. So we can actually figure out a discharge amount. And then we can start to tie that to observations that we see around river behavior, like flooding or floodplain saturation or things like that. Next slide, please. So the basic technique behind this is to use computer vision technologies to grid out a river and average the tracer activity in each of those squares to develop an average surface velocity. And OpenRiverCam does this for the most part by looking at differences in illumination and reflectivity. So really brightness across the river surface to be able to detect the difference between the front side of a wave and the back side of a wave. One will be brighter than the other in most lighting conditions. And when recognizing that, the software is able to follow that wave as it travels down the river and calculate the wave's velocity based on the river flow. Pretty cool stuff. So what do we need to do this? We need a camera that's capable of full HD resolution or higher. We need a flow that's got visible tracers. This is incredibly important. We absolutely need to be able to see movement in the river for OpenRiverCam to be able to do its job. But when we can do that, it can do that in a pretty wide range of circumstances. The surface tracers can be natural or artificial. Natural is our strong preference because that enables automation and unattended observation. But for sampling a river, it is entirely possible to use this technique with artificial tracers like sawdust or some other, biodegradable product that's introduced to the river to take a one-time sampling and understand the river's velocity. We need a light source. Right now, OpenRiverCam is a daytime monitoring solution, but Professor Winsemius is working on extending the software to be able to operate at night with the use of infrared illumination. Think about like a security camera with an infrared spotlight, similar techniques there. So we do anticipate being able to monitor flow during the, in darkness at night as well. The other piece that we need is a survey of the river's area and a really accurate mapping between the digital frame and the real world. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. And the goal here is really to answer that question. Like if this tracer moved at 50 meters per second, or 50 pixels per second in the digital frame, how many meters per second is that in the physical world? And then how does that translate into how much water is moving through the river at any given point in time? So this is an example of what our installation looks like. So this installation we used, I'll talk a little bit about the hardware that we used. We use a device called a PT box, which we sourced from a third-party company that the professor works with to be able to do some of his research installations. The product is called a PT box, and it really is a self-contained single board computer with two cameras, one configured for daytime observation, one configured for nighttime observation. Also includes a cellular modem, some power apparatus to be able to control a timed startup and shutdown so that the device can take 5 seconds of video every 15 minutes or every 30 minutes or things like that. And then the ability to be weatherproof on a pole under most weather circumstances. As I mentioned, we acquired this box from a third-party company. It was always our intention to look at ways that we could build our own low-cost device that's optimized for humanitarian purposes. And that is really kind of the next stage of our effort. We have bumped into some complexities and complications with this particular hardware platform being deployed in the Indonesian environment, high heat, high humidity, and also being deployed for humanitarian applications, making sure that it can handle, it can stand up to rough handling. It can be deployed by volunteers that have maybe minimal technology background or things like that. So this has been a great experience helping us to understand what a humanitarian version of this hardware platform needs to look like to be easily deployable with volunteers in the field. So essentially, we have this PT box positioned correctly to be able to have the right view of the river. And the right view of the river is something between 15 and 45 degrees from vertical to be able to get the right view of that wave, to see the difference between the front side of the wave and the back side of the wave and get the correct difference in illumination to be able to track that wave as it moves down the river automatically using computer vision. Um, the rest of the information, the rest of the equipment is largely support equipment for the PT box. This particular pole had a height of 5.5 meters above the river surface. And is a 4-inch pole with concrete at the base. It's important because the PT box, the video uses a fixed reference frame. It's pretty important for the camera not to move around, the pole shouldn't flex in the wind or anything like that. The solar panels, we have 200 watts of power and 50, 50 amp hours of power in the box there, which is a really substantial amount of power compared to the amount that the PT box consumes. We oversized for a couple of reasons. Number one, when we acquired the equipment locally, we had difficulty in finding something at the right scale. We ended up having to work with industrial providers, and this was actually the smallest installation that we could purchase, in the time frame that we had. Second consideration was that Indonesia has a very pronounced rainy season. And during the rainy season, we have minimal sunlight. We have to plan on only, 2 to 3 hours of effective sunlight in terms of, the amount of power produced. Solar systems are obviously very dependent on the amount of sunlight. So a consideration around this is, at all times of year and in all conditions, do you have the appropriate amount of solar energy to keep the batteries topped off and keep the equipment power cycling and things like that. So this is really what we built out. There is certainly the option to be able to power this with commercial or utility power if it's available. We went with solar to be able to make sure that we understood the process of deploying a completely self-sufficient station. But in the version of this that we planned for humanitarian applications, we plan to make a utility power version of this available as well, so that if you're mounting to a building and you have utility power easily available, you can skip the cost and complexity of providing solar. The device itself communicates its data through a cellular modem with a SIM card. So it connects to a local cellular provider and uploads the video and the data after its processing cycle. So it wakes up on a 15-30-minute schedule, takes 5 seconds of video, analyzes that video, uploads it to a server, and then shuts down. And that's pretty much the hardware platform that we built. Next slide, please. I mentioned that we did a river survey as well, and this was really important to be able to get an accurate cross-section and understanding of the river's shape and depth to be able to understand how much water it contains in the area that we're analyzing. So we had a survey pole, which is essentially a stick for measuring the height and depth of the water. We have a mechanism, you see the PVC rig that we've got there. We also have a mechanism for measuring water that cannot be traversed safely by a human. And that is to attach a GPS and sonar device to that PVC rig and pull it across the river so that we get a measurement of the depth of the river at various GPS points across the river without actually having to put somebody in harm's way if the river is a particularly dangerous environment, either fast-moving water, pollution, unsure footing, things like that. We also created ground reference points or ground control points. Those are the black and white squares there that are easy for the camera to differentiate. Basically, we use those to establish very well-known checkpoints in the camera's scene and associate GPS coordinates with those so that the software can overcome things like perspective distortions or lens distortions or things like that and create that very accurate mapping between the digital world and the real world so that when we look at this pixel in the display, we can clearly understand that this pixel is associated with these GPS coordinates in the real world. We used a type of highly accurate GPS called RTK, or real-time kinematic GPS. This essentially uses a base station and a rover that both communicate with satellites, but also communicate with each other to issue corrections and get us down to 2 centimeters of accuracy in the local frame for our GPS analysis. RTK is a form of differential GPS. So it uses 2 stations that analyze the differences between them to be able to come up with a really accurate GPS survey. We connected the rover to an Android phone and used an application called SW Maps to be able to catalog the GPS points as we conducted the river survey. So that's really kind of the technology mix that we had in play here to be able to conduct the survey. And again, we had strategies to be able to survey rivers that were both shallow and able to be traversed, and also rivers that were either deeper or quicker moving and, would not be able to be traversed by a person. Next slide, please. So some important things to consider. Here in the scene, you can see how we laid out the ground control points to be able to capture GPS coordinates at different water levels. So it's very important to be able to make sure that the camera can see the river at all water levels so that it can extrapolate, how high is the water, how much water is beneath the surface, and how much is the total volume that's flowing through. And of course, to make sure that, there's not vegetation that's going to grow in front of the camera right away, or that we have a plan for clearing vegetation, things like that. Certainly, sourcing goods can be a challenge in certain locations, and we had some lessons learned around that. In the survey time, water is challenging for GPS surveys for a number of different reasons, not just the sensitive electronic equipment that you've got out in the open, but also the fact that GPS signals are reflected by water, and sometimes steps need to be taken to make sure that we avoid multipath problems where a GPS signal hits a receiver, not just from the satellite, but also reflected from another source. So we need to be careful around that. Land use, of course, is a consideration, not just for permission to use, but also considerations around community support, concerns about vandalism or theft for the equipment, making sure that the community understands why we're placing a camera in the community and what it's observing, considerations around privacy and data use and things like that. And then making sure, that the camera is situated appropriately, has the right view. When we get ready to be able to support night viewing, making sure that we're doing IR illumination of the correct area in the right bounding and the right wavelength to make sure that we're not also disturbing residents or wildlife or other things like that. I think, some of the things that we learned in this phase were around making sure that we have adequate time and criteria for the river survey, choosing the right location, making sure that we have adequate time and an adequate structure around sourcing materials, and making sure that we have a good understanding of how the materials or what materials are needed because of the site dimensions and site layout and things like that. And then making sure that we've got adequate time for troubleshooting and the inevitable changes that have to come as you find out that maybe you missed one step or another and need to accommodate, or maybe different hardware needs to be accommodated. All things that we're trying to work towards a more effective, more comprehensive field manual for selecting a site, determining the equipment that particular site requires, and then deploying, configuring, and testing that equipment. Next slide, please. So in terms of data analysis, there is software in the PT box that we can do data analysis directly there, and that will be true with the humanitarian version that we develop as well. Doing data analysis on the field station, however, has one problem. The field station is off most of the time. Most of the time, it's just sitting there waiting for its wake-up call to take its 5 seconds of video, do its processing, and then shut itself off again. So it's more useful to do analysis using a server component The software for this that the professor has developed is called LiveOrc, and we've deployed one of those LiveOrc servers in AWS and Amazon Web Services to get to be the site where the field stations can upload data, and we can look at things like the graph that you've got here that tracks discharge over time and water level over time. Next slide, please. This data analysis also allows us to export to CSV or to retrieve data on a scheduled basis using an API. One of the goals for this project is to work with partner agencies like water management, environmental services, planning, like land use planning and things like that, to be able to determine, can this data be used to trigger other hydrology workflows? So for example, if the National Weather Agency has hydrology workflows to be able to determine, when do we meet the conditions to issue a flood alert, can we work with that agency to have our devices be devices that are contributing to that flow? Because these devices are easily placed at more difficult locations and have a more rapid temporal resolution, they're really well poised to be able to contribute data to recognize rapid onset events. And so we want to make sure that these, this data can be made available to partner agencies to help them in their alerting, and also to strengthen those partnerships with our Red Cross national societies and start to understand how we can work more closely together around the production, analysis, and consumption of this type of data for humanitarian and other applications. Next slide. Okay, yep. So that essentially is a lot about the technology that we're using and the installation that we did. I'll pass it over now to Tagu to talk a little bit about our collaboration with stakeholders, but please still feel free to ask any questions that you'd like in the chat, and I'll try to address them.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Hi, everyone. I'm Teguh from American Red Cross Indonesian delegation. So I will continue for the presentation. As we understand, for the installation was implemented on the last end of October. The initial idea of inviting the stakeholder was to ensure that all the agencies or everyone had the same knowledge at the beginning, so that the process would be easier in terms of how to synergizing the needs required and to enrich the data processing. So in here, when we worked at this project on Sukabumi branch, we invited also some stakeholder are relevant with this project, like from the university. We have and there is a Bogor Agriculture University, which is they have their hydromet study on there, and then hopefully during the process, during this research, we can get enrich some hydromet data and also other perspective in terms of the data analysis. And we also invite our government agency from the Meteorological and Climatology Agency, from BMKG, which is we need also how to combine their perspective data for the forecasting. Since Indonesia, our government med agency have impact-based forecast insert to their early warning system. So this is good also insight from them on how to collaborate and how to combine the data in the local, in the field, with the scientific data are provided by the Met Agency. And then we also invite the authority, water authority agency from the Ministry of Public Works, which is they have the authority to how to ensure the water at the river itself, about the high water level, and then the water from the up to the hills, with the synergize the station on that they have. Of course, in the government itself, we invite the disaster management agency at the city level, which is how to combine the risk assessment data in terms of the flood or another hazard are relevant with this situation. So that's at least in the perspective of risk reduction, we can combine the data itself to processing data and how to deliverable to the information that can be produced by this OpenRiverCam. Agriculture data, yeah, this is also the ideas, but need to more specific because in this project we doing in the city or urban setup, so it not effective more, but it can be also improved if we would like to doing in the rural perspective. So at least if we can doing some to see or to utilize in the perspective of agriculture, we can also utilize this. And the last one is from the community itself. Since PMI, they have their own volunteers in the community level, like CBAT, community-based action team. So this is good also to involve them, at least to maintain and to supervise, to monitor the condition at the field, and then how to report to the PMI and other stakeholders are relevant with this. Next slide, please. So this is the kind of the partnership that we involve engage in the beginning, and yeah, we still on communicate with them. Like from BMKG, we need like data sharing from the rainfall, hydrological, and forecasting, and then how to integrate it to their system like impact-based forecast and etc. IPB from the university, since PMI have a MOU with this university, we would like to engage them to combine with their perspective. Since there are suggestions by them to edit some equipment like how to measure the water quality and water level at the equipment itself, they provide or they propose on that. Yeah, BPBD, how to utilize this data later on with the early warning system are provided by them, and also can using for the contingency planning and other local decision support. Until, yeah, to the community, like I mentioned before. Next, please. Yeah, since Tom explained previously how we can utilize this OpenRiverCam, at least we get real-time risk monitoring, at least how to 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 see the real condition at the field level. Even though we still need more learning about the data itself, are provide this OpenRiverCam. And then as the early warning, if it is necessary, if we can improve more, so at least it can be a one tools to provide the early warning information, at least to the other stakeholder are relevant and also to the community. And yeah, for the driver data driven decision support, and like now the news issue about how to approach the anticipatory action, it can be also one approach or to strengthen the data itself with combine the any scientific data relevant with the approach. And yeah, how we can combine with the community-based program strengthening by utilize or empower the people or the community are living in the river itself. Next, please. Yeah, so this is the future potential that might be can be improved by using this approach or this project. we believe that OpenRiverCam it can be as part of a way of disaster risk management for the effective response, since we can provide the information and data how to cope the hazard itself, and how to treat the potential risks are happen on that area. And then it's also as a technological development that can be support by identifying a location that for the first or most severely affected by the flood, especially for the vulnerable groups are living on that. And it is recommended that we need more coordination to be strengthened with the Met Agency and also BPBD or regional disaster management by other humanitarian action also to enrich the data that can be produced in the future. And this is also how we can measure the identify the protocol and then the trigger and thresholds in terms of the anticipatory actions by using the data provided by this OpenRiverCam. And for sure is we believe that we can improve the capacity of the volunteers or the personnel of the Red Cross itself by develop the information system are provided by the POSCO or command post are belong of the PMI itself. Yeah. Next, please. Then. Yeah, I think that's from me. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Teguh and Tom. So yeah, if there's any questions for the group from the group, we have one in the chat from Kat. You mentioned interest in developing a low-cost solution version for humanitarian use. Could you share more about what specific components or aspects we'd be looking to make more affordable, alternative to the PT box, and or other things as well? And if we have any active conversations or partnerships already underway to work on this, or if this is still in the early exploration phase. So as Tom kind of alluded to earlier in the presentation, there has been some challenges with the PT box in the Indonesian climate and with its functionality. So we are already actively in that phase, looking at how we can do this. Tom actually, in his prior to the support trip where he helped install the PT box, he had begun kind of exploring the OpenRiverCam software on hardware he had at his home. And so building on those kind of early explorations, he's begun to pull together a spec list of components. And in general, anything we do will be cheaper than kind of this because we're saving on the manufacturing costs of somebody assembling it at a company, the shipping costs of shipping a completed unit from Switzerland. You might be able to find many of the components locally or be able to purchase them directly from a supplier online. So yeah, I don't know, Tom, if you want to build on that at all.
Yeah, I think one of the one of the things that we're really trying to achieve with a new design is that the PT box is really something that the professor in his consulting work has used at a number of different sites. But it's a device that's really, kind of geared to support or be used in an environment where the people deploying it have very intimate knowledge of how it works, how it's used, things like that. We ran into some issues with the ability to field service components or replace components easily in the field. And so we envision a humanitarian version of this that's a little bit more open, a little bit more modular in terms of being able to replace failed components, more readily serviceable by people that might not have a strong electronics or hydrology background or things like that. So those are a lot of the design goals that we've got, looking at a humanitarian version of this platform. The cool thing about it is that it is mostly commodity equipment. A Raspberry Pi, standard HD cameras, things like that. So there's nothing particularly exotic about the build. We just feel that we need to put it together slightly differently for it to be well supported as a humanitarian platform.
Thanks, Tom. Other questions? Okay, well, thank you so much for joining. As I mentioned, this is still only partway through the overall implementation of the project, so I'm sure we will have an update later next year for you all. And so look forward to a future Uplift session where we share how the project has continued to progress. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me by email or Teams. Happy to answer them or put you in touch with someone who can. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your day. A big round of applause and thank you to our presenters and the people working on this project. Oh, Shirley, do you have a question or was that a round of applause? Raise your hand. Probably. Okay. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Yeah, thank you.